Hey everybody, welcome to episode 26 of Valiant Effort. My name is Josh.
I am Nick. This episode is entitled Fear, Blood, and Shadows. Shadows don't really make... How do you do a shadow voice? Probably like Batman voice?
No, like Orson Welles from The Shadow. Who knows what evil lurks in the hearts of men? The Shadow knows. I love that show. You know, I love that show so much.
How about Vincent Van Gogh?
Vincent Van Gogh?
Vincent Price?
Vincent Price? Yeah, that's a good shadowy voice.
Yeah.
Not Batman. Batman is not the shadows. He is the night. Jack is having blackout episodes. He keeps waking up in an alley with dead bodies around him. What is the Shadow Man Loa doing while he's asleep? The abettors, who are the protectors of Shadow Man, are worried. They think Jack is too weak to control the Loa and they want him dead. Alyssa warns Jack. She tells him to go out into the bayou to find the punk Mambo. She will help him separate from the Loa. But the Mambo finds the Loa too powerful. She cannot save Jack. Only someone who truly cares for him can do that. Alyssa wants to be that person, but Jack rejects her. He wants to figure out who he is first before getting involved with someone else. Jack visits the home of McMullen, who he beat up when he was a child, looking for some closure on that incident. Even though Jack was acting in self-defense, he's been unable to let this incident go in his mind. Jack chickens out when he sees the guy in a wheelchair. He knows that he's responsible. Alyssa goes to Doc's grave. The ghost of Dox appears and tells her to avenge him by killing Jack. Jack tries again to meet the crippled man from his youth, but he doesn't want anything to do with Jack and yells at him to leave. Alyssa, torn between her duty and her heart, asks Jack to meet up with her. When Jack arrives, Alyssa isn't there, but the abettors are. They want to pass the Loa on to someone else, but the Loa is bonded with Jack, so he has to die for that to happen. Alyssa realizes that she never saw Dox's ghost, and that it was a trick. Alyssa interferes with the abettors' plans. When Alyssa is around, Jack can control the Shadow Man Loa better. The abettors decide to give Jack another chance. Besides, they need his help because the Tremble Loa is causing chaos in New Orleans and they need his help to stop it. Jack returns to McMullen's house one more time and the two finally forgive each other. Now Jack is in complete control of the Loa and he's able to defeat the Tremble Loa. Nick, I gave you this book. I tried not to bias you in any way. I wanted your honest and true opinions on it. How'd it go?
Well, as this note says right here, hated it.
Okay.
Hated it.
Okay. Did you like this more than the previous Shadowmans we've read?
Liked it less.
Liked it less.
I think this is the worst read I've had so far.
Okay.
Out of all 26 episodes.
Okay.
I hated this story. I'm sorry.
You're jumping ahead to the end.
I'm sorry for anyone from Valiant listening. I'm really sorry. I know that they're trying, but I hated it.
All right. So let's talk about why you hated it. Let's talk about reboots first. Was this a reboot?
No, this was not a reboot.
Why?
Because it continued the story. We have dead Docs. We have nothing about Jack getting his powers for the first time. We already have establishment of the characters, Alyssa and Jack and whoever those abettors are. This is not a reboot.
Okay. Is it a reboot of Jack? Because Jack behaves totally different than we've seen him behave.
I suppose, but the way that that's been written into the story, it was not well done.
Would you have preferred a reboot?
I would have much preferred a reboot. An actual reboot would have been... That's what I was hoping for.
Yeah. When I told you new creative team, new writer, new artist, your heart of hearts was going, I hope this is the start of something new.
Yes.
And in your mind, this was a continuation of what we've read before and even worse.
Yes, because what I feel like they were doing was trying to fix the story but by trying to fix the story, it made it worse.
So, I agree with you. There are things in this that I liked, but for the most part, I didn't like it. And I agree with you that they were trying to fix the story, but I think the things that they tried to fix were things that didn't need fixing. So let's talk about Jack first. They've totally changed his character. Before he was kind of, well, he was just kind of being led around, you know. He wasn't in control of the story that was happening. He was kind of bland. He was kind of vanilla.
He still is.
Yeah, okay. Expound upon that.
Well, he's there. He's weak. He doesn't know what he wants, and he keeps slipping into this Shadow Man character and waking up and being like, oh, I'm covered in blood again. Why am I covered in blood? I'm not gonna let you take me over, Loa. But the Loa still like takes him over anyway, and he's just weak. He has no purpose. It is not attractive to read a character who is weak and who doesn't have control over himself and is just whining the entire time. It is not. You want somebody that's powerful, that you can feel like and relate to. You want somebody that if you had those powers, and then you'd want to be that person, much like Eric from Exo Man War. I mean, he's strong.
Okay.
You don't want somebody that's, meh, I don't want to be doing this. I don't want this. My dad is so much better than me. Meh, I need to love myself. Meh.
Do you agree with their decisions to try to give him some backstory and try to toughen him up? They tried to toughen him up a little bit.
The one thing I loved about this story was the backstory.
So did you like his interactions with McMullen then?
Yes, that was my favorite story to read in this entire thing.
So that's because that was real.
Yes.
And everything else is not real.
Right. Yeah. Because we got to see a little bit of who he was in the past, but it wasn't enough.
And that's the only part of the story in which I saw any character growth from him.
Same here. Yeah. Same here.
So I also like that part of the story.
The backstory, I really wish in an extreme general sense, there are two stories here. There's the backstory, and then there's him fighting the Loa. Those are just, if you strip everything away, that's it. And those would have been great stories, just changed a little bit. I really, really wanted to see more of the backstory. Yep. Every time they got right into the backstory, they'd cut to another thing that's going on, and it irritated me to no end. It's like, stop. I mean, I know they're trying to do this cliffhanger thing, or something like they do in TV, where you got one story, and then in order to keep your interest, they cut to another thing. But it's happening too much.
Yeah, so that's something in this book that really drives me crazy. There are you read a 2-page thing, and then you're in another scene, and sometimes the scene even has the same characters, and it's not until you're halfway through the second conversation that you realize, oh, this probably took place like 2 days later. You know, it doesn't disrupt the narrative just to put at the top of the page the next day. You know, what does disrupt the narrative for me is when halfway through I realize, wait, when does this take place versus that? That's when I get disrupted in the narrative and really struggle to understand what's happening. This book, if you think about it, I think it takes place over like 4 or 5 months.
Are you kidding?
No, I'm not.
It felt like it was one night.
No, I think it takes, because he goes out into the bayou, that takes a week. He comes back from the bayou, that takes another week. People don't fall in love in a day, so I would hope that would have been over several months that part took place. We'll get into that in a little bit. But I thought this story had to have taken place over several days, but you don't feel that way. Interesting.
No. I mean, well, it should have taken place over at least a few days. It felt like it was just at 1, 2, 3 nights at the most to me. I don't know.
Did you like Punk Mambo?
Nope. Because her character wasn't explained enough to me. Who is she? What does she do? Why does she do what she does? And then she was really only in it for issue number 1, or
And
the
then a
first
little bit
issue
in the
here,
fourth issue.
and a little bit in the fourth issue, but that's it. She's kind of like Renee Rousseau from X Manowar. She was just mentioned just a little bit here and a little bit there, nothing in between.
I liked what we saw of her. I do agree that we could have gotten more from her.
I think I would like her character if she had a bigger part in the story. She was talked up a lot beforehand, and she seems like this 20-something-year-old witch doctor. That's an interesting concept. I don't feel like it was expounded enough on her character, and like she has potential. Just I don't know I don't know what her deal is. I want to know more about her.
Why do people think that Jack is responsible for Doc's death?
Again, he's not.
I know.
He's not.
They keep saying that like several times in the story.
Yeah.
Wasn't Dox responsible for his
Yes,
death by going?
Dox was an idiot.
Yeah, he did. He made a stupid decision in the second volume.
Yeah, and he died in 30 seconds. Dox, first of all, Dox was being a jerk and not telling Jack why he had to do whatever he had to do in the last trade. I forget what it was, but Dox was not explaining himself enough to Jack. And then Jack goes off and does his own thing against Doc's orders. So Dox feels like he has to go and save Jack, and he gets himself killed by Dark. Jack had nothing to do with it. Dox basically was responsible for his own death. At least Dark was.
It's like the second Hunger Games story, the second book, where nobody is telling the main character what's happening around her, and then they're all mad at her because she doesn't do what they expect her to do. Tries me, I hated that book. The beginning of the story, we're kind of thrown into, here he is, he's in an alley, he's bloody. He obviously beat those people up or killed those people who were laying in the alley next to him. Would it have been nice to have a transition issue where we see Jack going too far in his quest for justice, where we see maybe the transition between what we saw in the first volume and the second volume? I mean, we got 2 fill-in issues, one with short stories and one a Halloween special. Would it have been too hard to make one of those fill-in issues the bridge between these 2 stories? Would that have helped a little bit?
Maybe, because in the last issue that we read, he was kind of already in control of the Loa, and then in this one, he's totally not. He's retracted in a sense, and seeing that progression from confident to not confident would have been nice to see. What made him get that way?
Maybe we would have seen why he's killing people, because it just, when we've seen him before, he was just a nice guy, and now we're thrown into a situation where he's not. It's too jarring for me.
Yeah, and then it didn't happen before in the last few trades where he's blacking out and killing people.
Right.
Why is that all of a sudden happening?
I mean, I get the fact that they're trying to do a Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde story, and I'm okay with that because that's an interesting thing to explore, especially in the Valiant universe where balance seems to be a really important thing in the Valiant universe. You know, Harada has to have Peter, the houses of the wild. So this is another story about dual nature, except that it's an internal battle of dual nature. So I thought maybe that was interesting to explore. But I do agree with you that his exploration of that came off more whiny and less, how do I get control of this?
Mm-hmm.
What would you have liked to have seen them do with that? Because you said that would have been interesting to you done right. How do you think done right would have?
I knew you were going to ask me that question, and I wasn't really sure how I would answer it. What would I have liked to have seen? I would have liked... There were too many things going on in this story. and therefore it detracted from the main points of this story. I feel like if they had thrown away with some of the other things that were going on and just focused on the flashback and this struggle, then more ideas or more fleshed out story would have come about, and a stronger story would have been produced. In terms of how I would have written it, I have no idea.
Yeah, I'm not asking you to write it because you're not a writer. Neither am I. But I'm just kind of interested in, I wonder in the way that our attention span is as a society right now. Here you are, you're a writer, you've been given the task to save this series because it hasn't been going well. And your thoughts are, I gotta put all my chips on the table at once instead of actually building a real story. I gotta throw it all out there and see what sticks. And to me, that didn't work at all.
No.
I sometimes feel that's how movies are written nowadays.
Yes.
Like, these are the things that need to happen, and okay, now write that story instead of figuring out what you want your story to be about. Not the action points necessarily, but what the story is about. And I don't know what this story is about. Is it about forgiveness because of his interaction with McMullen? Is it about?
I think if you were to boil down everything to its core concept,
you got a skull and you're putting it in boiling water. You're getting rid of all the hair and the flesh, like we saw.
we're not putting any glue in it.
Okay.
If you boil everything down to the main concept, it could be forgiveness or self-forgiveness.
Yeah.
He's trying to forgive himself for putting a guy in a wheelchair. He's trying to forgive himself, or I should say not forgive himself, but he's trying to like himself.
Yeah.
I don't know why he hates himself, but he's trying to forgive himself.
Well, he's an orphan. Maybe that's why. I mean, there's a lot of emotional baggage there.
But that seems to be the main concept of this entire story.
Yeah.
So, again, branching out from that just one step higher becomes those two stories of the flashback and his struggle with himself.
Yeah.
And those two stories are great.
Mm-hmm.
Just great. Everything in between and everything that makes up those two stories is so convoluted. Like, I think you might be right that they had too much on their plate and they really needed to fix this thing, and then they really were in over their heads and they just wrote too much. I would have loved to have seen more of the backstory, because the backstory just showed that one frame of
him hitting
the guy. And I had no sense whatsoever that the guy was paralyzed from that punch. There was no sense. He just punched him in the face and he's lying down on the ground. That means nothing but a knockout to me, not paralyzed. And then Jack also keeps talking about all these other bullies, and that the person he finally took it out on was Jamal McMullen. Let's show him getting bullied more. Let's start off with showing him getting bullied and him just taking it, and more and more and more. And you, as the reader, just really start to feel like, come on, man, fight back, just do it. And then when he does, then we see this picture, and then we see the guy lying on the ground, and then maybe the next picture after that, we see an ambulance come up with a neck brace around him or whatever, and then that's that. And you're like, oh crap, he really hurt this guy. He didn't just, knock him out, or he didn't just lay him flat. What happened to him? And then it would have impacted so much more seeing him in that wheelchair. Then you would have really felt bad for Jack.
Yeah.
And then me as a reader, I would have really wanted to push Jack more to apologize to Jamal, because even though I saw Jamal in a wheelchair, I thought that it was going to be for some other reason. It was because Jack assumed that he put her in the wheelchair. I thought that it was good because he got into a car accident a few years later.
Yeah.
I hadn't because we didn't.
He must have cracked his skull, like cracked his, when he got knocked down and he hit the ground.
Maybe, yeah. I
I
mean,
mean, we only have one panel. You're right. We only have one panel to go from.
right.
In all that.
It just wasn't enough information, and it didn't give enough story of Jack's past. All we got was that he was bullied and that he nearly killed this guy.
Do you think the writer is Peter Milligan, by the way? Do you think the writer was trying to be too fancy, too clever? With all these threads, with not sure, being sure exactly when things take place. Let's use anime for an example. I think that there are some animes that are over my head, and I think that there are some animes that are trying to be too clever, and they're over everybody's head. But then people go, "Oh yeah, that's great anime."
Yeah.
And but they don't really get it. And I kind of feel like this story is like that. To me, like I don't think it's over my head. I think it's just trying to be too clever, and so I just don't.
Well, it's funny you mentioned that because I did make the comparison to this to Neon Genesis Evangelion,
Okay.
which is one of those animes that everybody loves, but it's extremely philosophical and symbolic.
Yeah, you showed me the first
One
two. And I
one.
said I'm not watching
Yeah.
this.
The end of the episode, the end of that series, episodes 25, 26, and the movies of that, is this book. Where so many things are going on, and it's just this mind melt, and you have no idea what's going on. That's this book.
Okay.
However, it's this book is not nearly as philosophical and symbolic as Neon Genesis was. That one has such a huge fan base that people are still debating about what happened to this day, whereas this one, I'm not going to get that same sense from.
So the fourth issue of this, we have the Tremble Loa, another Loa spirit, which we saw in very small snippets throughout the first three books. But when those snippets came, you're like, what is this thing?
Yep.
What is the point of this? There's no rhyme or reason to what's happening. And then all of a sudden we're told in the fourth book, it's the Tremble Loa and the city's going nuts. When? When was the city going nuts? Why? Show your work. Like, that's what I wanted to write on this. Like my wife writes on her students' papers. Show your work. What? That's why I think that this story had to take place over a longer period of time than you think, because whatever this other Loa spirit is doing in the city, that has to build, right? So
I guess so. I didn't really understand what was going on with that Loa, because all of a sudden here's this guy walking around with tattoos and then he rips his face off and he turns into a vampire, or something that looks like a vampire. I say vampire because it looks like exactly like the vampires from another anime called The Blood, The Last Vampire. But it was in two panels, go away, went away, and then I see a random person floating for no reason, and then the Loa guy comes back, which I didn't realize was a Loa at that point.
right.
And
No, you're not told that until the fourth issue.
Yeah,
you are
well,
not told that.
Yeah, and then all of a sudden this Tremble Loa is going around, and I thought that he was the Tremble Loa, that Shadow Man was the Tremble Loa. I'm like, oh, that's the real full name of it.
You know what? That would have been a great story. Like, he has got to come to peace with himself. That's why he needs to get the forgiveness of the guy in the wheelchair. And when he comes to peace with himself, then the city calms down, because he's the one who's affecting everybody.
That would have been cool.
That would have been a cool story. But no, there's this other thing, and he's got to find peace with himself first. Why? There's no reason. He could have just gone and fought that other Loa.
Yeah, and he had no problem with that before.
Yeah.
No problem with Dark fighting Dark. Why is there this other Loa that we didn't know anything about? Why is it running rampant on the town?
And Nick, I've read this. This is my fourth time reading this. I swear they did not mention that he is that drug dealer guy with the tattoos is a Loa until the fourth issue of this story. So why would you introduce it as a character and then not say what the hell it is? Show your work. That's not the thing that got me the angriest about this book. There's something that got me really angry about this book.
And what would that be?
the fake love story.
I'm with you on that one as well.
This love story between Jack and Alyssa, don't believe it.
It's totally fake.
It's so stupid.
It felt forced.
You know, when I was first reading it, I thought, oh, she realizes that Jack needs somebody to love, so I'm gonna pretend. Like
That's
thought,
the way I felt about it
yeah,
too.
that was like, oh, okay, she's gonna pretend, and then she's like, I'm falling in love with you. No, you're not. You're not falling in love with him, because that's not how it happens. And the reason that it makes me angry is not because it's too quick, and that is a factor, certainly. I mean, I don't believe.
I agree.
I don't believe in quick love. It's not because it's too quick. It's not because she had said in the previous volumes that she's not interested in him, which she did when Justin Jordan wrote this. It's the fact that she didn't love him until after he smacked her in the face.
Oh.
Yeah, that's screwed up.
That is messed up.
Like, she was not really interested in him, and then she gets smacked in the face, and now she's pining for him. That is a terrible, terrible message. Screw you for that. That makes me so angry.
Did he smack her in the face, though, or did he just put up his hand?
No, he punches her.
When does he punch her? Because I thought he just put up... I thought he raised his hand. And she said, you raised your hand to me.
I don't know. The way the panel looks to me, it looks like he's smacking her in the face.
I totally agree with you, because I thought that he slapped her in the face as well. Yeah. I don't think that it was drawn appropriately because of the things that are coming off
there's
his
movement.
Hand.
Yeah, there's movement.
It looks like it's like sweat or spit or something. And I was just as infuriated as you are about that, because I thought that was a little going too far. And then she says, raise a hand like that to me again.
I still think he hit her.
He may have. And regardless whether he hit her or not, the ambiguity of that image should have been fixed so that it didn't look like he slapped her in the face.
It's a terrible love story. It's so unrealistic. You know, that's one of the things that I hate about like episodic television, where your character meets somebody and then they have to fall in love by the end of the episode, but because things have to be reset at the end of the episode, then they fall out of love. But you know, it doesn't happen in 45 minutes. And I just hate it. I just hate the whole love story. There's no reason for it. She was a great character before that. The only good thing is now that she's now being drawn without goggles on her head. But other than that, she's taken a total step backwards in this whole book.
I felt like it was forced. I felt like they needed to do something with these two characters. So hey, you know, it's a guy and a girl. That's
just lazy writing, though.
That's the way it felt to me.
Lazy writing. I mean, just because a guy and a girl are friends, now they have to be together. Like, that doesn't make sense to me. You can be a guy and a girl and be friends or work together and not have a sexual relationship. And it just, to me, the way I read them in the first two volumes, they had a brother-sister thing going on.
Yeah.
If anything. And this is just gross now. It's just so stupid, and it's not who that character was. Step backwards for her. They tried to make a step forward for him. I think it's a step backwards too. I think everything's a step backwards. I like the whip. That was a pretty cool weapon.
Okay.
I just needed to say something positive. Do you have anything more to say about the love story?
About the love story? No, I just felt like it was forced and that it was needless, and cliche. I didn't think. I think it was just written in there to be written in there.
They made such a big deal about how he had to learn to use the scythe as a weapon, and when you finally see what the scythe can do, it's like a teleporter. But at least I guess we know one of his powers now.
Well, I just find it funny that, like, you don't know how to use a scythe, you just swing it. That's what I
know. What do you mean you don't know how to use it? It's It's sharp.
I really didn't even understand what it did when it did work. I don't understand how it works, what it does, where it gets its energy from. I didn't even know that it did something. I thought it was just a scythe. I thought it was there to be cool.
Do you have anything more to say about the story till the wrap up?
The wrap up. Yeah, the end of the book.
Yeah.
The fourth issue in here talks about Jack's dad and how awesome Jack's dad was and how Jack can never be his dad. I want to read about his dad.
They also spent a lot of time talking about how awesome Marius was. And
Yes,
we got an issue of him, and he was awesome, and I'd like to see more of him.
Yeah. I don't care about Jack. Let's just read about how awesome his dad was. Let's read about that.
Yeah.
If he was so cool, what are his adventures? I want to know what those adventures were. I don't need to see wussy little whiny pants over here going, why can't I control myself? And then he punches a mirror, and then Alyssa calls him and he's like, "What's up, babe?" Trying to be all cool. I need to talk about the art as well.
I would love to have a conversation with you about the art.
I 80% hated the art as well.
We get to have an argument. I think that this art is phenomenal. Tell me why you don't like it.
Jack's appearance nearly changed every single panel.
But this is the first time he's drawn and looks black.
Yeah, he looked black, he looked white, he looked Puerto Rican.
Really? I thought it was pretty consistent. Okay.
No. Every single panel, he looks like somebody. He had long hair, he had short hair. At one point he was buzzed.
Yeah.
There was no consistency with his art whatsoever. Everything was too dark and shadowy. I understand that it needs to be dark and shadowy because it's about Shadow Man, and the color scheme kept shifting from purple to red, blue,
the colors
black.
are the best.
I don't like that. What do the colors represent? I'm looking at what they represent. But they're not representing anything to me. They're just there to be a color hue for this set of 5 panels onto the next.
The colors are awesome.
I didn't like that. And the scratchiness of it. Again, it feels too rough. They're trying to be, this is a very rough story and we need to be all blocky and scratchy and everything. I did like the lighting, how the lighting looked on the characters. There's the nice light touch made them look 3D and real. And I liked that part. I just didn't like everything else about the art.
So to me, the colors were the only time when I knew what part of the story I was reading. Like when we switched to the vampire guy who's the Tremboloa, he had those panels have a different color scheme than when we're dealing with the abettors. The abettors have their own color scheme. Jack has a couple different color schemes that have to do with when he's in flashback or when he's dealing with something else. I thought I have to 100% disagree with you. I think the colors in this book are the best colors that we've seen in Valiant.
I don't know. It was just.
I think that the art is great. I personally didn't have a hard time. I always recognized when Jack was Jack.
I recognized Jack was Jack just because of the way of who he was.
Yeah.
But I mean, there was no consistency in his character design whatsoever.
I disagree.
Well, I mean, you got this one page where he's got fairly long, short hair, and then you got this one where he's like, it's like buzz cut almost, and he looks totally different. He looks white in that one. Actually, he looks Italian in that one. He looks black in this one. And then there was this other panel where it's black and white in the background, but red in the foreground. And I don't know, like that. I don't know what this is. Why is it red here? Why is it black and white there? Red here, black and white there. Why are they talking in red? It didn't
work for you.
It didn't work for me. No.
Okay.
It didn't work for me. Maybe because I was just already angry enough that I just couldn't and didn't want to see what the color schemes meant.
Yeah.
And I was really getting perturbed at the inconsistency of Jack's design.
Look at the colors on this one page when he is in the garden waiting for Alyssa, but Alyssa doesn't come, right? I love this page where we get the soft green glow of the phone on his face. The sort of detail in the back. We know that there's stuff going on behind them, but the focus is on the character. I think that the color scheme.
No, the glowing of the phone is like the lighting.
Yeah.
That I was talking about.
Well, the colorist is responsible for that.
Okay.
I'm glad that we disagree on something finally. I think you think that the colors are terrible, and I think that, and you know what? I get it, because they're not normal. Certainly, he's trying to do something with it, and it just doesn't work for you.
No,
but for me, it was the thing that grounded me through the story when I didn't know what characters I was reading. I could tell better by the colors than I could by the drawings.
The other thing is, I felt even the story, the fact that Jack is now struggling with his inner self and the Loa at the same time, it felt out of order. I feel like this storyline should have happened much earlier in the Shadow Man series. I feel like this was the only thing that they could come up with, so they're saying, okay, well, let's have him struggle with himself now so that he can really become who he is. And even after he wins, he's still, I'm not as good as my daddy.
Yeah.
So I have no emotional or I have no connection to this story whatsoever. And I would have put this book down if we weren't doing this podcast.
Well, this is where Karen and Tyler stopped reading.
Is it?
Yeah, they read these 4 issues, and they didn't read anymore.
I this is where I would stop reading as well.
What's going to happen when I hand you the next volume?
It will be very difficult to read it.
Okay.
Even more difficult than this one. This one was very difficult to read.
Yeah. All right, we'll do our wrap-ups in just a second. Easter eggs. In preparation for the launch of this, they were trying to get people excited about it because I guess the sales weren't that great on the book. So they did a little special issue called 13X that was released because this story starts with number 13. So that appeared in Bleeding Cool magazine number 7, and it's an 8-page story. And it's kind of like what happened before, and it's a little scene with the abettors planning what they're going to do with Jack going into the future. It was written by Peter Milligan, but not drawn by this or colored by this team. I just mention it because I think it's weird that it's not in this book. It's the only thing that has been published that has not been collected so far. And I wonder why. I put out a couple feelers asking this question. I got no response. I don't know why they didn't just stick it into the back of this. I mean, it's not a great little story or anything. It's just kind of a recap, but it's weird that it's the one thing that they published that's not in it. I also want to mention that there's this really cool song by this band called A Sound of Thunder. And it's about Punk Mambo, and you're going to hear it at some point in this episode. I'm not sure where Nick's going to edit it in, but you'll have heard it or will hear it at some point. And it's pretty neat. I think it's cool that somebody enjoyed the story and they were influenced by it and created some art for it. So, this story is working for somebody. Obviously, it's just not working for us. You can find them on Twitter, ASO Thunder, at ASO Thunder, and you can find links to their website there. They have some other cool songs too. So, what's your favorite cover, Nick?
I didn't really like many of the covers either, but I think that this is the best one for me.
Yeah, the Shadow Man number 16 variant by Russell Dauterman, which has Punk Mambo on the forefront with Shadow Man in the back. Yeah, that's a really awesome cover. I think I'm gonna agree with you that that's my favorite cover. Another cool thing is this. They have a Valiant Signature Series variant for issue number 14 by Bob Hall. Bob Hall was the artist of and the writer of the original Shadow Man, which is 100,000 times better than this. Yeah, I'm gonna agree with you. The variant to number 16. I think that's a great cover.
Judgy part of the show.
Nick,
hasn't this entire episode been a judgy part of the show?
You look really mad at me right now for making you read this. Are you mad at me?
I understand that I had to read this. I'm not...
Do you understand that it's good that not all of our episodes are us talking about how we like everything, because that sounds bad?
I am partially glad about that. I feel awful that
somebody put work into this and you don't like it.
Exactly.
And you're trashing it.
Yeah. I mean, I understand that this is a very, very difficult thing to do, and it's very time consuming, and I feel bad about that. And they've done all great work in all other series. This one, it just doesn't work for me.
Yeah. You didn't answer my question. Are you mad at me for making you read this book?
No, I'm not.
Okay, good.
I understand that some of these titles I'm just not going to agree with. And that's not your fault.
If Shadow Man were to reboot, would you have an open mind and ready to see what they can do to start again?
I would be cautiously optimistic.
Do you believe me when I tell you that the original Valiant series is really good?
I believe you. However, I cannot imagine what it was like because I don't know anything
nothing
about
like
it.
This.
That's all I know. It's nothing like that.
And it's kind of weird because all the other series, there's things that are similar, but this, it's really not at all. It's got the same name, but beyond that, to me, they're not similar at all. So, well, I'm glad you're not mad at me.
No, but I really had to fight not closing the book and setting it aside, and just I really had to fight the urge not to come in today and say I couldn't read all of it.
Yeah.
And the only thing that actually made me read all of it was this podcast.
I disagree with you on the art. I do like the art, both the pencils and the coloring. I actually think you like more of this story than I did. I could have really cared less about the handicapped guy that he put in the wheelchair, because to me that backstory doesn't coincide with what I've read of the character already, so it doesn't really make sense to me. So I just don't like it. And the love story is just so atrocious.
Give me a skull, give me a skull. Slip in the glow, slip in the glow.
However,
Yes.
I would recommend this to people who like
Oh yeah, there are people who love this.
gothic
Yeah.
stuff
Yeah.
and horror type stories. I would say, yeah, totally read this story. You'd love it.
Yeah.
But anyone else like you and me, I'd say stay away. And I wish I was Tyler and your wife right now, because they chose to stop reading this story, and this is where I would choose most definitely to stop reading this story. But I cannot.
Because the podcast means so much to you. Mostly because we've come so far with it. I bet you really want to see what we're reading next.
Yeah.
You're ready for the next episode.
I am. I need salvation.
And what do you think I'm going to hand you?
What
What are you hoping?
I'm guessing Bloodshot. We haven't read.
And
Bloodshot
is that what
in a
you're
while.
like hoping your heart, that's what you really want? This is what the Bloodshot.
It really doesn't matter what you hand me.
Anything
now.
is going to get you
Anything.
out of this funk?
Yeah.
Okay.
Here it is.
Archer Armstrong
With
with Bloodshot. That's pretty funny.
actually, this volume has 2 issues, collected 3 issues of Archer and Armstrong and 2 issues of Bloodshot. It's a crossover.
Oh, okay.
They just put Archer and Armstrong on the top. So next episode, episode number 27, we'll be reading the Mission Improbable storyline, which is the Archer and Armstrong Bloodshot crossover.
Archer looks like Woody.
Well, he's drawn on that cover by Tom Fowler, who drew Quantum and Woody, the first volume of Quantum
I
and
knew
Woody.
you were going to say that.
Where can people find us?
VEPodcast.wordpress.com is our website. At VEPodcast is our Twitter. And email us at VEPodcast@gmail.com.
You're really getting good with that.
Somehow.
Please leave us reviews on iTunes. Even though the Gold Book thing is over, we would still very much like it.
Who knows? Maybe we'll do something else later on with iTunes.
I think that we probably will further along in the series.
So if you already give us an iTunes review, you won't need to worry about giving us an iTunes review when we do something else then.
or if you're
Get ahead of the game.
or you can give us a Canadian one. That would, if you're from the U.S.
Okay.
I don't know how that works. You can also find us on Stitcher, TuneIn, all those places. So thanks for listening. Thanks for letting us vent.
Send in your objections to what we had to say. We would love to hear what you thought.
Please give us your counterpoint. If you like this, we'd love to hear it.
Absolutely.
And as we did before, when we talked about Shadow Man and somebody emailed us and told us why they liked it, we will be more than happy to engage in that conversation. But I think it's time for us to sign off right now because Nick and I have some glue we need to sniff.